Shane Watson is on a mission to change how the cricket world thinks by revealing the secrets to his success.
That's what I really see that my journey is now. Just get this information, share this information to as many people as possible.
He was one of the most technically skilled all-rounders of all time, but when he was on the verge of retiring, he discovered an approach to the mental side of playing which revolutionized his game.
I'm very fortunate to have gone through that information at the age of 34, right towards the back end of my career.
Over the next 4 years, thanks to these new skills, Shane had some of the best performances of his life, including his legendary undefeated 117 off 57 in the 2018 IPL final to win it for CSK.
It was controlled. This is what's happening. I'm pulling myself into it. This is technically what I need to do. This is mentally what I need to do. And then it just sort of opened up, and then that is what dreams are made of.
Since retiring, Shane has been sharing this mental skills approach with some of the sport's biggest stars as the current head coach for MLC's San Francisco Unicorns and the PSL's Quetta Gladiators.
I feel so fortunate now to be able to coach and be a head coach so I can help sort of set up a high performance team environment by absolutely applying these mental skills frameworks from day one.
But now Shane is sharing his performance secrets with the whole world. He published a book called The Winner's Mindset, as well as an online course that details his approach and also helps readers apply his simple frameworks to turbocharge their own performances.
You want to bring the best version of you that you can to your performance, while also reducing stress and anxiety around performance. So it's one of the most essential life skills that we can learn.
The world's best cricketers swear by it, including Faf du Plessis, Rachin Ravindra, and Ricky Ponting, among many others. Shane joined our Business of Cricket podcast to talk about his career, mental skills, and a whole lot more.
There's text, there's audio, with me talking about my different experiences, how I use the mental skills information throughout various times of my career.
There was so much valuable conversation that we're breaking it into multiple parts. In part 1, we discuss what these powerful mental skills are and why they can help anyone in a high-performance situation in cricket and beyond. And we're here live with Shane Watson, one of the greatest all-rounders to play the game of cricket in history. Shane, thank you so much for joining us.
Z, don't be silly. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And, you are a coach, you're an entrepreneur, you're an author, and now you have a new venture in a subject area that I absolutely adore and am passionate about. Why don't you tell our audience about it?
Yeah, thanks. You're very kind. I've just launched an online course version of The Winner's Mindset. The Winner's Mindset is the second edition of my mental skills for cricket book that I launched. The genesis of The Winner's Mindset, the book or the online course, is all around the essential mental skills that all human beings need to know and understand. What it is all about is understanding how the human mind works when we get in our own way and sabotage our own performance because we have the wrong thoughts and allow our thoughts to be the wrong thoughts at times and we all know what that feels like when we just know that we haven't brought our best because with our own thoughts, we've got in our own way. And on the flip side of that, it's understanding how to be able to create the right mental environment, so have the right thoughts at the right time to be able to access all the skills that are so deeply ingrained in us. We're all performing in all different aspects of our lives, whether that's in our careers, whether that's as a partner, whether that's as a parent. We're all performing, and we all want to know and understand how can we bring the very best version of ourselves every time we need to step in to perform. This course is something that this information I was taught from a mental skills guru who's based in the US, Dr. Jacques Dallaire. He's based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'm very fortunate to have gone through that information at the age of 34, right towards the back end of my career, and then being taught how to teach it, how to mentor it. And now it's in everything that I do. It's in my coaching. It's the first thing in any new player that I work with, any new team environments, the first information that I give to the players and the people around me, because I just know how powerful this information is and just it continues to blow my mind, how the access to this information, it's not readily available, which just, again, it blows my mind that this information in such a really simple form that I got taught from Dr. Jacques Dallaire is not in a really simple way and super accessible to everyone, because whether you're a student trying to perform as well as you can in exams, you want to bring the best version of you can to your performance, while also reducing stress and anxiety around performance. So it's one of the most essential life skills that we can learn. So I feel very fortunate to have been taught this information, and now doing everything I can to get this information out in different formats, that people can learn and implement this information into their daily lives. I've been very fortunate in Australia to be able to partner up with Safety Culture, who's one of Australia's most successful tech startups over the last 5 or 10 years. And what they do is turn information into micro-learning courses, engaging micro-learning courses. So the Winner's Mindset online course is a much more interactive way of learning this mental skills information. Different people learn in different ways. I love reading books, so that's been always a way for me to be able to learn. I love watching videos as well, whether YouTube, those sorts of things, to be able to learn. So different people learn in different ways, but this online course is a way. There's text, there's audio, with me talking about my different experiences, how I use the mental skills information in a good way and not so good way throughout various times of my career. But there's also tests, so you're tested on the information, so you are having to recall the information, so you're just not sort of going through the motions, to be able to just make it more engaging so people can really take the information and apply it into their daily lives. So it's just another way to be able to get this information out in a more engaging way of learning. Incredibly proud of the product that we've been able to put together.
So I'm really excited about the product. I'm super passionate about this subject area. And over the past couple of decades, I've read everything you can think of. Like you, I like consuming books as well as other formats. But every book, every book in the pop domain, right? Whether it's Blink or whether it's Thinking Fast and Slow, all those, but also some of the theory, the neuropsychology, performance and how the brain informs performance, and especially peak performance, competitive performance. It's just a passion, right? So I've read everything. But let me tell you, for what it's worth, my perspective, having read all that, what is so awesome about what you've done, right? And how it fits in and how it fills a massive gap that was in the market. One, it gives just the right amount of theory, right? For someone to understand what's going on, right? So you're not overwhelming people. That's one. Two, it is so focused and effective at creating practical frameworks that people can use to learn and to apply to what they're, it's really concrete. It is a step-by-step guide to help people identify in themselves what they should be doing and do it, right? That's two. But three, the real kicker is the credibility that comes from the fact that it comes from Shane Watson saying, this is what I learned at this stage in my career, and look what I did. And if you're asking about the 2018 IPL final, right? Like, this is how I did it, right? Just trust me, this works, right? That kind of credibility is not, a lot of those, a lot of the books on performance weren't written by people, right, who've gone 117 off 57 in a final. And so you combine those three things, and there was nothing in the market like that. Something that could actually resonate and be accessible to the masses. I'll stop my gushing, but that's what your book
I need to take you everywhere I go, because what you've said there, I need to distill that down in my sales copy to be able to put those things together. Because look, that's why I've got this information out there, again, to be able to relay the information, because I know how powerful that information was, the step-by-step practicality of how to apply the information. That's why I was able to apply it so quickly, by understanding it. And that's why I've been able to get it out to as many people as possible, is one of my life journeys. I know that's one of my life journeys now. So you've put that so brilliantly. Thanks, Z.
Well, the only thing I compare it to in terms of kind of an analog out there in the market, in a different domain, not about mental skills, Tom Brady's book, right? The TB12 method. I don't know if you've read it or seen it, right?
Yeah, I have. Oh, yeah.
So, I've lived in New York for 24 years, but I've been a New England Patriots fan almost all my life, right? Long before Brady came a fan, and I was always an older guy while he was. So I appreciated his longevity, and he has this book, and people keep asking, "Hey, how does he do it? How is he 44 and playing football?" And my answer to that is, people, he has a book. It's all in the book. Why don't you just read it and learn from it? And I was having a conversation in the past few months, again, with cricket heads like myself about, greatest, white ball knocks. Obviously, they're talking about Maxi. They're talking about whatever. They're talking about, okay, 2018 night. They're like, oh, he was later in his career. How did he do it? Same thing. People, he has a book. Now he has a course written. It's there. Just read it. He tells you everything. Right? And so just something to point to for the world and say, like, you can do, obviously you can't do that. You need the technical skills first as well, but you can elevate your performance relative to your technical skills using that, right?
Yep, absolutely. And the TB12 book, I demolished it when it first came out, and then my training, my training that I did change significantly because of reading that book, because it makes so much sense. So yeah, I appreciate that analogy there, because yeah, in the end, that is an education step-by-step sort of process with TB12, and that's what the winner's mindset's absolutely all about as well, to know how to apply the information. It's just the practicality of how to apply it, not just the theory that makes it so hard to be able to decipher, and then how to be able to actually apply it to my daily performance in getting the very best out of what I've got.
Yeah, and again, it comes from the guy who was playing in his 40s, and he's telling you how, right? Just like this comes from the guy who in his late 30s was on the franchise circuit, like blowing everyone away, and he's telling you how. So, but let me ask you a question about that shit. Why do you think, if we're talking about other sports, right? In many sports, the discipline of sports psychology is much more established, right? They're professional tennis players who've had sports psychologists in their teams for years, right? Obviously, you came to Jacques Dallaire through Will Power, who's a race car driver. A lot of race car drivers do. There's sports psychology and performance psychology in a lot of sports. Why do you think cricket, as a sport, was and is so late to the game here?
That's a very good question. That's a question I continue to ask, and have asked for quite a while. Is why I wasn't able to get access to this in my early 20s. And look, there has been a lot of sports psychologists around cricket, whether that's in Australia, whether that's on the circuit in different parts of the world. But I think it's more so that it's the older school sort of mentality around, like the coaches, for example, who and there's a lot of great coaches out there, for sure. But the coaches, a lot of the times, like, just do this, okay, technically, and that's mainly what cricket's primarily actually talked about and worked on at training, and it's all around the technique side of the game, whether it's the debrief at training or debrief after getting out in a game. It's more so around that, because that's really what the coaches are equipped and understand well enough. A lot of the time, the coaches don't fully understand what the right sort of sports psychologist would be to be able to, like, complement their skills. There are some, by what I've heard, I haven't worked with too many in general who really helped me, but I've heard there's a few good ones out in the circuit, but it's few and far between that more so have the immediate impact to be able to just give the players the right information at the right time to just see their performances elevate. That's one, but two, reduce stress and anxiety and worry around performance as well, good and bad performances, because that's one of the critical things that you get out of this information, is how to deal with failure a lot better and a lot easier, but also the expectations around performance. It's understanding how to be able to not build things up bigger than what they are, which is normally when you start to fear failure, when you do get in your own way. So yeah, it is very interesting why cricket is quite late to the game with the mental side of things. As you said, racing car drivers, they've been doing this for a long time. Other sports, tennis players, and they've always had people in their corner. But I think just for whatever reason, the people who've come into the game over the last sort of 20 or 30 years around sports psychology, with my experience, that it's just too theory based. it's harder to decipher how can I actually use that information to apply into every training session that I do, every moment that I'm in a game, and I need to have the right thoughts at the right time to be able to execute my skill over and over again and make less mistakes. So that's where, again, every time I work with players in teams, even though a lot of them have been working with different sports psychologists, so many times like one or two little things like, gosh, yeah, I've never really heard that way of talking about this skill, and now I know how to actually apply it.
Yeah, amazing. So, just like, I just want to talk for a second about it's almost like a beautiful irony, right? That, so cricket was late to the game with mental skills, and so were you, right? And it was
Yeah.
late in your career, right?
Mm.
And I mean, you had already, right? By the time you met Will and you met Shock, I mean, you were consensus one of the best white ball, at least all rounders of all time, if not all rounders of all time. Best, pace all rounders, which is, you see a lot more spin all rounders, pace all rounders. You've been the top ranked all rounder in ODI internationally, in T20 internationally, right? You're like still one of, I think, 7 cricketers to have international 10,000 runs and 250 wickets. And this came at the end, pretty much towards the end of your international career, at least, right?
Mm.
And because I think March 2016, after the World Cup, is when you just called it on your international career, and you met Jacques the summer before. And the first chapter of your book, or the introduction, is "I wish I knew then what I knew now," and it goes both ways, right? It's like it's so amazing that you got this knowledge from how it came to you is like serendipitous, and you had 4 glorious years, but at the same time, it's like, wow, you had 14 years where you really could have used this, right? And if you were kind of like Superman already, like what would you have been had you had this?
I get asked this a bit actually, and look, the one thing that I do know is, look, I don't know if my performances could have been any better, and in a way that you can't control results, even though you wish you could. You try and bring the best skills that you can to every performance. So I'm not sure if the results would have been better. Look, I think I'm confident they would have been, but look, I've had a lot of very good results throughout those previous 14 years. But the one thing that I absolutely know would have been very different is the stress and anxiety and worry that I carried around since I was a kid, and especially as a professional cricketer from the time I started playing as a 19-year-old, but then in and around international cricket from the age of 20. The stress and worry that I had around performance, I'd just turn myself inside out, and I would suffocate my performances like often because of the fear of not performing. And then if I didn't perform, which would happen, then me beating myself up and really worrying about selection, worrying about how things would change. And I wasted a ridiculous amount, like tens of thousands of hours over those 14 years, worrying about things that were totally out of my control. So I know that I would have been able to navigate the different challenges that being a professional cricketer what life presents, in a much calmer, more directed way. Again, the results, I believe, like Test cricket, for example, from a batting perspective, I know if I was able to apply, or I believe if I was able to apply these mental skills throughout my Test career, I would have definitely been able to bat for longer periods of time. And that should constitute runs as well. But I made mistakes, mental mistakes so consistently because I was mentally fatigued, because I was so desperate to stay in and concentrate all the time that I was switched on all the time, which meant that I'd make technical errors because I was mentally fatigued. But then, like it is, you walk off, you watch footage. I'd watch footage. You have a coach sitting over my shoulder going, okay, this technically you were slightly off on here. This is the reason why you got out. And then we'd go back to the nets and work on that technical thing. It was never, okay, were you mentally a bit like fatigued? What were you doing the lead up to you getting out? What were your thoughts? What were you like in the day or two before? Were you mentally just over processing it, and you go into the game and you've mentally already actually played the game before it's even started? So those are the things that certainly would have been different for sure. But again, I, like well, I can't take it back, but I wouldn't have it any other way, right? Because I've been able to sort of go, I was able to have it. It wasn't too late where I was able to then apply these skills for T20 cricket for Australia for about 3 or 4 months. But then in T20 cricket around the world against the best players in the world. So I was able to have that chance to do it for 4 years, not just apply these skills and talk about them retrospectively. Oh, I would have used it in this way, or would have used it in that way. No, I was troubleshooting at every moment that I was out in the middle for those next 4 years while I was playing. So that's why anytime a question comes up around this information, I can answer it because I've been through it, good and bad, while applying these skills in the cauldron against the best players in the world.
Yeah, and that's why I called it a beautiful irony. I almost think that like this is the way it was meant to be, because had you not struggled, right, that much with this and still had results and then done what you did after you got it, then maybe you wouldn't have had the same mission you do right now, right? Which is to bring this knowledge to everyone, and you wouldn't have been as credible kind of a preacher, right, of this. So
Yep.
I think it worked out the way it was meant to.
Agree.
Hope you enjoyed part 1 of our interview with Shane. Be sure to check out part 2, where Shane talks about his greatest performances, including the IPL 2018 final, and how he pulled those off.